أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
You guys asked a lot of questions. A lot of them are unrelated, but if we have time, we'll try to answer those as well. So, we will begin the questions. Sheikh Mazin, the question is, when I think about the hereafter, I worry about not getting to see the Prophet ﷺ and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why is that? What does it mean when you start seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name in Salah? So, the second question is unrelated, but the first one is.
Yes, that is somewhat unrelated. First of all, seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your dream is a matter of interpretation of dreams. I'm not an expert in terms of interpretation of dreams, although I have a bit of background on it. So, in terms of seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now if you see the name of Allah, of course it's different from seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. But really, dream interpretation should be done by talking to the person directly. Because as even the stories of Ibn Sirin and like even the four classical scholars, they would give one interpretation for one person and another interpretation for another person, even though the dream was identical. One person he said you're going to Jannah, another person saying you're going to Jahannam, because the first person reminded him of one ayah, the second person reminded him of another ayah related to Jahannam. So it's obviously something dependent on who you are. Usually you know more or less your life and the variables related to it to know more or less what the dream has to be. At the end of the day, when it comes to dreams, you can't know what it means until something happens. Then you look back and you're like, oh, okay, that's what the dream meant. Because there's no way of verifying it really at the end of the day. In terms of fearing not seeing Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam on Yawm al-Qiyamah, this is a very natural fear. It's like, not seeing your mom for 10 years that you love and adore, and then being afraid that she might die before you get back. Right? It's a natural fear that we all feel towards everyone we love. And really, you're not guaranteed. That's why you have to work. You have to try. You have to put an effort. The Prophet ﷺ said that there will be people who, there's a number of categories. Again, I won't go into too much detail, but a number of categories of people who will come to the pond at Hawd of Rasulullah ﷺ. There are people who are called his ahibba. These are the people who brought Islam back after it was abandoned by people. It was ignored. It was left. Look at secularism, all these sorts of things. There's lots of different categories of people who will be with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but it's a very special place, and you have to do special things. So you have to put an effort to study Islam, carry Islam, work for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sincerely.
Okay, this question is for Abu Shahadah. So this person is asking in relation to dawah. They say, let's say you have a friend interested in Islam. They want to learn from you and don't want to ask others about Islam because they are shy. They don't want to go to the mosque either. How should you tell them about Islam?
Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. Scholars of Islam, they've advised every single one of us, from amongst them Shaykh Fawzan. He has a very beautiful lecture in the Arabic language called Kun Da'iyan, be a da'i. And all it takes for anybody to be a da'i is what the Prophet said, Ballighu anni walau ayah. Convey from me even if you know one ayah. So let me ask you a question. Is there anybody here that would like to admit that the Hamilton hockey team is better than the Toronto Maple Leaf hockey team? Put up your head. The Hamilton hockey team. So people are ready to get up and to make that claim. Now, I grew up in Windsor, so I don't like the Toronto team, even though I'm from Toronto, I like Detroit. So people are out giving all kinds of messages, and this is what they say. Either you're going to be a da'i or you're going to be a mud'i. What's the difference? A da'i is the one who calls to whatever. Come to McDonald's. Come to Popeyes. Come to Hamilton. Come to Toronto. And the mud'i is the one who listens to the call and then they follow. So no one should be shy from giving da'wah. Because this is part of the reason why we were created. Allah Ta'ala went on to say, Inna salati wa nusaki wa mahyaya wa mimati lillahi rabbil alameen. Say, my living, say, my worshiping of Allah Azza wa Jal, my salat, and my sacrificing of the animals, my living and my dying, are all for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, who's the Lord of the worlds. So this is the reason that we're put on this earth. Has anybody heard the last verse of Surah Muhammad? وَإِن تَتَوَلَّوْا يَسْتَبْدِلْ قَوْمِ غَيْرَكُمْ ثُمَّ لَيَكُونُوا أَمْثَالَكُمْ. Allah Ta'ala goes on to say, if they turn their back on the religion of Allah, Allah, He will replace them with people that aren't like them. And there's another verse as well. So who here, they don't want their Islam? I would love to take somebody else's Islam and give it to my parents. But I can't do that. That belongs to Allah Azza wa Jal. So no one should be afraid of giving da'wah. And if you give the da'wah and the people accept and they do the good deeds, guess who gets to get that ajr? You. Inshallah ta'ala.
Jazakallah khair. So this question is for Imam Yasin. The question is, how come my iman and my nafs is strong when I am around Muslims, but when I am not, I feel it is very weak?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Well, of course we know that we feed off of each other and we feed off of the energy of one another. And that's why we're taught that when we gather for salah, that we indeed gather. We know that the salah in congregation together with fellow believers is 27 times better than the prayer in isolation. Why? Because we have a congregational dimension to our faith, to our religion, because we feed off of each other and we encourage each other. This is basically the reason. And of course, we live in a society where the majority are not Muslim, they do not share our faith. So of course, if you're young, you may be plagued by issues of peer pressure. So you want to fit in, you want to be like everyone else. But of course, if you have a particular way of life and those who are not of your way of life are calling you to another way, of course you may be inclined, your nafs may be inclined to fit in, to feel quote-unquote comfortable. It's quite natural. That's why it's very, very important to make sure, to understand that you are as your friends, and your friends are as you. Very, very important to understand that. Allahu A'lam.
Jazakallah khair. So this question is for Sheikh Mazin. Based on your experience and knowledge, would you advise university students that are basically dealing with da'wah in terms of campus matters, how should they deal in da'wah matters, and what would you suggest to the MSA members to do about it?
What should they suggest to the MSA members?
Yeah, basically, how should they deal in terms of da'wah internally within the MSA and externally with the students, because it's basically there's a lot of atheists and people like this in society. So, all right.
This is actually really interesting because
it's from Brock, by the way.
it's from
Brock.
Okay, it's really interesting because I am a very strong advocate of opening debates. People misunderstand. Actually, in London, it's a very neutralized, more or less neutralized kind of environment where debate is not promoted. People see conflict as a negative thing. The thing is, conflict where there's disrespect or obviously violence is a very bad thing. But when there's a clashing of ideas, it's a very, very fruitful, very beneficial thing. Because the thing is, you can't make people question their understanding unless you present contradictory ideas that they're not comfortable with. And then but that's why respect is very important, because you present the idea, you offer them the idea, and you let them choose. That's why, I remember, as I mentioned, it's a choice. You just explain the truth, and you leave it with them, and it's up to them to accept. They don't have to accept, but you have to have the opportunity of discussing, whether it's issues of aqidah, whether it's issues of politics, global politics, analysis of political motives, or the application of Islam globally, or whatever else it may be. I also recommend, of course, it's very, very important that students are fearless in their explanation of the truth. Why do we call Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu al-Faruq? Why do we call Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu al-Siddiq? These are people who are uncompromising on the truth. And so what happens is that at universities we're way too scared of offending anybody. Offending people when you're being rude, it's completely unacceptable. But when you offend somebody because you simply said, I believe, for example, that there's only one God. I believe that the Quran is from Allah, and all other religions are either have been replaced by Islam or they were never valid in the first place. Somebody might feel offended by that. You say, there's a reason why I say this. There's a reason why I believe Islam is a solution for mankind. It should replace all secular systems and the old communist systems back in the day when that was a debate. I believe that the solution for Syria is Islam. The solution for Iraq is Islam. The solution for all of the Muslim lands and the West. The solution is truly Islam. Things like this. that, and again, I apologize, actually, I got caught up. This is a topic very close to me because it's very frustrating watching universities that are stifled where discussions are not allowed. As far as MSAs, it's really important that MSAs take the initiative to promote discussion and open topics, not just comparing. Let's see what's nice about Islam, let's see what's nice about Christianity, let's see what's nice about Judaism, and find the equal ground. The question is, how do we know where we're truly going to go after we die? And within Islam, how do we know what Allah commands us to do in this day and age? Things like this are very rich, and that's why the university environment is so rich, because it's a thinking environment, and we really should make use of it as best and as much as possible.
I actually found another question for Abu Shahadah, which is also, I think, sort of on topic, but it's addressed specifically to you. So it says here, I basically want to become, what says a good girl, so meaning practicing, but sometimes my heart tells me to do bad things, but I still want to try to become a good Muslim and follow the path. Can you give me some advice to do that?
Yeah, I wanted to just add to my brother's answer, but inshallah ta'ala, the Prophet said in one narration, al-mar'u, and in another narration he said, ar-rajulu ala dini ala khalilihi fayandur ahadakum min khalil kama qala sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said that a man or a person is upon the same thing as their friend. So look to see who you take as your friend. So birds of a feather they? Birds of a feather they? I can't hear you guys. Birds of a feather they? So we need to be around, as the Prophet said in another narration, he said, Man tasahib ila mu'minan. Do not accompany anybody except a firm believer. So unless your da'wah is powerful, that when you influence people, because for us, I believe that we are people that export, not people that import. With that, Jazakumullah khair.
Sheikh Mazin has agreed to answer this question. It's off topic, but the rest of my questions are off topic, so I don't really have a choice. So it says, are you allowed to take OSAP? To what extent do interests alone become acceptable with regard to education necessity?
This is a complicated topic to answer. It's a very touchy and very controversial topic to answer, but I'm going to answer it. And it's also off topic. But I'm going to answer it because it is really important to hear this answer. Everyone's going to tell you, lots of people are going to tell you that yes, go ahead, you got to get an education. But the real question is, do you? Are there alternatives? I didn't actually finish my computer science degree, and I owned 2 businesses up until this point in my life. You don't require a degree in order to become successful. Of course, that's not saying that you shouldn't get a degree. A degree is very important if you want to work in very advanced sciences like in medicine and architecture and so on. But the question is, none of these things are a requirement to entering Jannah. Now, there are, of course, alternatives. Some people I know have raised money. Some people I know, they already have OSAP, but they don't pay off the interest and their credit goes bad. So what? So the thing is about it is that you have to understand a few variables. It's very important to understand. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that there are 70 levels of riba, 70 levels of interest in terms of sin. The lowest one is the lowest sin, the highest one is the worst sin. The lowest sin of riba in Islam, the sin, is equivalent to fornicating with your own mother right in front of the curtains of the Kaaba. Okay? That is the equivalent of the lowest level of interest. The sin is equivalent. You have to understand that riba is one of the biggest crimes to Allah Azza wa Jalla. It is an enormity, one of the kaba'ir. Allah Azza wa Jalla on Yawm al-Qiyamah declares war on the people who deal with riba. The angels will give you a sword and say, now you have to go fight Allah Azza wa Jalla. Go take the sword and you have to go fight him. And Allah Azza wa Jalla, he's that angry with the idea. The Quran does not say, leave riba. It doesn't say, leave most of riba. It says, daru ma baqiya. Everything that's left of riba, all of it, has to be abandoned. وَلَكُمْ رُؤُوسُ أَمْوَالِكُمْ. And for you, you can have the principle only of what you have dealt with. Riba, even in pennies. Some people might look at the reasoning behind this, obviously because Allah said so. But there is actually a very interesting thing about it. If you look at the effect of interest on a society, on an individual level, if I give you $5 on top of $10, what's the harm? I'll give you $5 extra, whatever. Look at a society though. It sucks all the money up. Who can give loans? The millionaires. Who needs loans? The people who can't even afford to pay their bills. So what happens is that it sucks the money up to the wealthy and it removes the middle class and it creates a massive lower class, like that's happening today. This is the effect of riba. It's an incredibly destructive system that ruins economies and destroys societies and gives the wealthy elite control of 98%. Right now, 98% of the world's wealth is in the hands of less than 1% of the world's population. So the thing is that this is what riba does. It's a devastating, very damaging thing. When you look at OSAP, you look at it, well, it's just my life and whatever. Remember, Yom al-Qiyamah, getting into Jannah is the entire purpose of life. Now, what do you do in these sorts of circumstances? There's lots of options. Lots of people can find ways. You can borrow money from a friend. There's a lot of wealthy, actually, people in the Muslim world, or even over here, you can borrow money from them. Some people want to give you a qalb hasana, for example. They get reward for it. You might be able to find that. At the end of the day, if your only choice is to not get a higher education, you might be able to afford something cheaper. But if your only choice is to get a higher education, or a lower education, or no education, or you have to go get an OSAP loan where you have to agree to pay riba, you obviously know what the answer is if you want to face Allah Azza wa Jal with a clear conscience. يا أيها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي. So, O you whose soul that is calm and tranquil with the meeting of Allah Azza wa Jal, come back to your Lord and enter Jannah. So that's the thing, is that do you want that to be your case, or do you want to go as the soul that is in turmoil and terrified of the disasters that they've thrown upon yourself to face Allah Azza wa Jalla? It's a very difficult thing to say because we've been raised our entire lives to think that education is the epitome of our lives. It's the meaning of life. People won't even marry you off. They won't even allow you to marry their family unless you have a high-end degree. But that's not the way we perceive things as Muslims. The meaning of life is to obey Allah Azza wa Jalla. He will open doors if he wants to open doors. If he wants you to become a doctor, he'll become a doctor. But sometimes you have to follow the only path. There's a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. It's a hadith Qudsi Allah Azza wa Jalla says, in the meaning of it, O son of Adam, if you were to follow every single path in this universe to achieve what you want to achieve, you will never achieve it unless you follow the path that I've set out for you. So if you want to achieve success, you have to follow the path of Allah Azza wa Jalla. And He might give you success in haram, but that's a disaster for you after you die.
Jazakallah. Imam Yasin has agreed to take this question. Question asks basically, how can I become stronger and more confident in myself as a Muslim, especially given all the uncertainties that are in life?
Assalamu alaikum. As I was looking at my daughter, I recalled a story one Shaykh told me, and it was a very interesting story. The way he said it, I'll try to explain it. It's concerning the friends issue. I'm just going back to that before I get into that. But there was a bear and a snake, and this snake was actually killing the bear. The snake had wrapped around the body of the bear, and what happened is a man came by and saw the snake wrapped around the body of the bear, and the man actually killed the snake and saved the life of the bear. So the bear was very happy, and the bear decided that he was going to serve this man and take care of him and honor him for what he had done. So the bear followed him everywhere, and the bear did everything for him, protected him, was his basic his muscle, right? So finally the man was asleep, and the bear was watching over him, and a fly just happened to be flying around the man, and the bear was shooing the fly away. But flies are very stubborn, so the fly continues flying around the man. The bear is trying to shoo the fly away, and this continues on and on and on until finally the bear picks up a big rock and smashes the rock looking for the fly, but ends up crushing the man and killing the man. So the Shaykh said in a very stoic and very beautiful way, he said, the moral of the story is, be careful who you take as friends. Be careful who you take as friends. It's very elliptical. I'm not sure if it's above what's happening here. But anyway, I just thought of that story when I looked at my daughter. Allahu alam why, but you can deal with that and let it marinate. Nonetheless, the uncertainties of life and whether, how can we maintain our confidence? Well, in my talk I mentioned that we have to really learn about our faith, learn about our religion, and learn about the proofs of our religion, and understand that knowledge comes before faith. That you can't have faith in that which you do not know. And the real mission is to return to the source. That we have to spend our life doing jihad. We have to struggle and exert ourselves to the utmost of one's ability so that we can return with some semblance of purity to the source. We have to purify ourselves. We have to polish our hearts. We have to clean our hearts. We have to engage in a lot of dhikr because that will increase the certainty. Another story, there was a group of Ethiopians and a group of Turks. A group of Ethiopians and a group of Turks. And they were working, they were artists and they were working for a particular king. And this king decided to have a competition. He wanted to have a competition to see who could create the greatest piece of art. The greatest piece of art. So they were given murals, big murals where they would be able to paint and produce a piece of art. So when the king asked the Turks, what do you want? Well, they wanted paint, they wanted brushes, they wanted supplies in order to paint a very beautiful picture. Right? So they were given the supplies, the paint, the brushes, etc. And then the king asked the Ethiopians, what do you want? And the Ethiopians said they want some water, they want some rags, and they want some soap. So everyone said, that's very strange. I said, okay, fine. So they gave them rags, they gave them water, they gave them soap. So there was a curtain drawn around both of the murals as the Turks and the Ethiopians began to work. So a lot of noise was around the Turk side, a lot of noise was around the Ethiopian side, but the problem is the Ethiopian side didn't have any paint. They didn't have any equipment to actually make a picture. Anyway, everyone allowed them to continue. This went on and on and on until time was up and they had to reveal their paintings or their art. So what happened is they pulled the sheet off of the Turkish side and there was a beautiful, beautiful pictures of nature. The colors were beautiful, color coordinated, just a magnificent piece of art. And the Turks stood there very proudly and said, imagine, look what we did, but the Ethiopians don't even have any equipment to actually do anything artistic. So nonetheless, they thought that they were going to win this contest, and then finally the curtain came down on the Ethiopian side, and the Ethiopians had actually spent all of their time cleaning and polishing their wall and the mural to the point where the glare and the shine of their wall reflected the painting and the art that was produced by the Turks. So brightly that the painting of the Turks looked more beautiful reflected on the wall of the Ethiopians. So how do we gain surety and certainty? We have to make sure that we polish the qalb. We have to polish the heart so it can reflect the best of the divine. Wallahu a'lam.
I've handed Sheikh Mazin a bunch of questions you guys asked him specifically, and he has 5 minutes to try to answer them.
5 minutes. Okay, so I won't hold the mic for this. So I was hoping that there'd be some more questions related to my talk, but I hope that the talk was so clear that you guys are not interested in any further questions. I hope that everything, and I again, jokes aside, I really do hope that the topic was clear enough and that we can walk away with something good, inshallah, from it. There are a few questions that are somewhat related, and then a few questions that are off topic. I did avoid the questions that are fatwas. Is this halal? Is this haram? Just because it's you can go to like all sorts of fiqh books and find answers for that. So I'll try to use the time for stuff that only we can discuss here. The question here says, if everything is already written, why do we make dua? For example, I wanted children, why do I pray for it if it is already predestined? The thing is about dua, there's a big topic with relation to this, and the fuqaha or the ulama have debated this and gone through different details. The opinion that I follow currently is that Allah Azza wa Jal, He takes the sum, because the knowledge of Allah Azza wa Jal is not a time-based, like my knowledge right now is stuck in this moment of time. And every single moment that passes, my knowledge increases. So when I make a decision right now, it's based on me being imprisoned in this particular moment in time. I can't go back and I can't go forward. My decisions are moment to moment based. With Allah Azza wa Jal, He's not imprisoned in a moment of time. Time to Him is irrelevant. He created time. So the most important thing to understand when it comes to dua, your dua is relevant to your position in time, but your dua to Him is outside the realm of a timeline. So your dua affects your life, but it's based on Allah Azza wa Jal already taking it into account before the universe was created. He's already decided all these things for us. With relation to dua, affecting qada, affecting things that, for example, whether or not you're going to have children. So dua is very important, but it doesn't change Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from moment to moment, because Allah Azza wa Jal does not change from moment to moment, but rather it's already been taken into consideration. It's a hard thing to wrap your head around, because we're talking about the creator of the universe, that He does not work according to the restrictions of human beings. So that's why it's a little difficult, but it becomes simpler when you understand that He's outside the realm of time. So He sees time, obviously, as one single unit, whereas we see it as seconds and moments, and we're stuck in this, and we don't know what's coming next, but we only know what happened, whereas with Allah Azza wa Jal, His knowledge is, of course, encompasses all events that have happened, that will happen, that are happening, and that haven't happened, if they did happen, how they would happen. There's another question there, but I'm going to skip that for a sec. And then the next question is very similar. If everything is predestined, doesn't it mean that everything is out of our control? Whether we end up in heaven or hell is already decided for us? And that's incorrect. The thing is about, and this is again a very big topic, there's a lot to describe. Dr. Munir al-Qasim mentioned a great deal of it, and he created a lot of clarity. The thing about qada, in another angle, is that there are things, and there's a very simple way of explaining it, maybe in a very quick summary. There are things that we control and things that we don't control. Everything we don't control is from Allah Azza wa Jal. Everything that we do control is our realm of choice. When you try to do something within your realm of control, if Allah Azza wa Jal interferes, then that's qada. If He doesn't interfere, then He allowed you to make a choice. So when it comes to destiny, whatever you can try to control, go ahead and try to control it. If He doesn't allow you to do it, for example, you want to go and move to Medina. You want to live in Medina. You're dreaming about moving to Medina. You do everything in your power to move to Medina, and you're not able to. Allah Azza wa Jalla did not allow you to. Let's say you get on the airplane, and you're flying to Medina, and you're halfway there, the airplane has to land, and there's issues with visa, and people are stopping you, and you get sent back. That's Allah Azza wa Jalla choosing these things. As long as you put in the effort, that's your realm of control. And let's say you're walking to work, and you trip on a stone or on a crack in the ground, you scrape your knee, you gotta go, let's say you more than scrape your knee, you really hurt your knee, you gotta go to the hospital, and then, so you don't go to work that day. Your realm of control was to go to work, but then Allah Azza wa Jalla interfered. You want to get married to somebody, same thing, everything's working out, everything's looking great, and just there's a misunderstanding that just happened to happen, and you're trying to fix it, and nothing will work. As actually happened to me. Before I got married, I was talking to this sister, and that didn't work out, something didn't work out. I thought, this is it. This is the sister that I want to marry. The craziest circumstances would suddenly arise. I would make dua for Allah Azza wa Jalla to stop this marriage if it's not the right one for me, and subhanAllah al-Azim, the craziest things would interfere and just end it. It was just over. Some of them are crazy stories. Maybe we talk afterwards, I can tell you some of the stories. But that's the thing is that, so basically, you only control what is within your sphere, whatever you can try to do. If you succeed, you're allowed, that's your choice, that's your freedom, that's your realm that Allah Azza wa Jalla has allowed you to control. Everything outside of that, and everything that interferes with your realm of control, is qada of Allah Azza wa Jalla. And so only worry about what you control, and be happy with anything that you don't control, because that's qada, that's being pleased with the qada of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Question is, why are men favored more than women in Islam? This is actually, obviously, it's a very valid question. I'm smiling, because obviously I find it funny. But it's a very understandable question. Because even the wives, the sahabiyat, came to Rasulullah and said, Ya Rasulullah, the men get this, the men get that, the men get this, can we just have one day? So that's the thing, is that men are given precedence. And it's not that men are better, it's that men are different. Men are very competitive, very testosterone driven. That's what you find. Now what's important to understand about this, the thing about men, and I'm going to say some things that may sound sexist, and forgive me for it, but these are things that I believe in. You'll find that some of the best chefs in the world are men. The best race car drivers are men. The best athletes are men. The strongest female athlete isn't even half as good as the best male athlete. And I'm not saying this as a sexist thing. We all know this is the fact. You take the best female athlete, put her on the best basketball team, she won't even close to the competitive level. It's not because women are inferior. They're just designed different. Men have this very deep, strong competitive edge, and it drives us very, very hard. Whereas with women, it's not as strong. So it's not that this is a weakness, because on the other flip side, you try having a man sit there and take care of a screaming, crying baby for 10 hours a day. The man is going to cry for at least half of that time, and then the woman will come in there. And honestly, I watch my wife, and I see the patience that a mother has. I can't do it. I just can't do it. No matter how much I try, the patience that just comes so naturally to her, these are things. What I'm saying is the drive of a woman to be nurturing is as strong as the drive of a man to be competitive. And so the thing is, Allah Azza wa Jalla, when it comes to the laws of society, He directs them at the men, because we're the ones who are going to run the society. We're the ones who are going to implement the laws for the most part. Women, of course, are involved, but it's not as much as men. Men are the ones who are taking care of going out and working and so on. The ahkam of women are related to the home and taking care of the family and so on. Again, these are things seen as sexist and whatever, but the reality is, if there wasn't somebody taking care of the home, and both are competing in going out and working, what's going to happen at that point in time? The family will get neglected, and the whole society will collapse. You have kids going out and getting drunk, and girls going off and working in all sorts of places that we would never want to even have horror, nightmares about our children working in. And these children are lost because of a broken home, because the mother was so desperate in seeking her career, and the father also wanted his manhood, and he wanted to be, his career, and then the whole entire house is neglected. The thing is that these are roles that Allah has given to every person, and so women excel at raising a household that builds the entire foundation of society, and men excel at building buildings and running governments and preventing wars and preventing crimes or fighting wars and arresting criminals. So the thing is that it may not be something that the feminist world promotes and something that you may like or may not like, but this is the fact. Rasulullah ﷺ said about women, for example, is that one of the best qualities in a woman is that she's not seen by men. So the thing is that somebody might say, well, that means you're going to hide your women. No, it means that you're going to protect your women from men who have weaknesses towards their desires. They're just going to look at her up and down all the time. I don't know many women that would like men to treat them like an object. And I know lots of brothers, obviously, that want to control. Even those who are weak, they still want to control these things. So the thing is, why are men seemingly favored in Islam? The truth is, it's just Allah Azza wa Jalla has different sets of laws for men as He has sets of laws for women. And He basically, most of the laws of society are directed at men, because men are the ones who are going to take care of most of those things.
You have 1 minute left.
And this actually is good timing. 2 questions that are revolving around why is it mandatory to wear hijab. And this is actually a very important question I'd like to answer. Maybe if I can borrow 1 extra minute for this.
If the other 2 speakers are okay with it.
I apologize. There's so many questions that
You gotta pay me $5 and him $10.
no problem. Yeah, and so the second question says, if a friend asks me why I wear hijab, what top 3 things should I tell them? This is in relation to the hijab. This is actually a very interesting topic, because when you look into the evidences from the Quran and Sunnah related to hijab, you will find that hijab is a definition of nudity. Just like a man wearing pants and a shirt is him covering up his nudity. A man wearing a pair of pants and a shirt is not an Islamic ritual dress. It's not like, when people say, I have the right to wear hijab because it's my religious right. No, you have the right to wear hijab because nobody has the right to tell you to walk around naked. The thing is that the Quran says, cover your nudity. It doesn't say, be modest. This word modesty was just kind of thrown out there to kind of reconcile this idea that hijab is an act of a religious, it's like Hajj. You just go do it because you're told. The thing is that the Sahabiyat would not go to a gathering of men out of fear that even one strand of hair would show, because that's her nudity. So the example of a woman's hair showing is similar to a woman's chest, let's say the top part of her chest showing, because that's what Allah Azza wa Jalla defines as nudity. So a person might say, well, for example, imagine one example I use for this, and I'll try to be quick with it. The example of Pompeii. The people of Pompeii are people who were destroyed. Allahu A'lam the details, how accurate these details are. The people of Pompeii were people who were destroyed by a volcano. When they unearthed these people, they found that these people were petrified in natural positions of cleaning and cooking, and of course there was a great deal of zina and pedophilia and all this kind of stuff going on. One thing that they found with this nation, so Allah Azza wa Jalla destroyed them in the middle of their day. Like, a volcano explodes, you would kind of start running. These people weren't running. They were in the middle of their regular day and they were destroyed by the volcano. What they found that was interesting about the city is they found at the doorway of almost all the doors were, and excuse my language, genitals, moldings of genitals. And what they found with the clothing of the people, they found holes in their pants, right in their crotch. Okay, that's how people lived. It was normal. This is how they actually turned out, they sanctified the human genitalia. And again, I apologize for bringing this up, but it's a very interesting story. So what's interesting about this particular story is that imagine a sister or a brother living in those times. And this particular person, let's use a sister because obviously hijab is more of an issue than a brother, not wearing a Speedo or something. So let's say, for example, you have this sister living in these times, in Pompeii, and a sister who wears hijab, who covers that hole in their pants, goes up to her and says, "Sister, you have to cover your nudity. You have to wear hijab." And she says, "I'm not ready yet." Or she thinks to herself, well, everyone else is doing it. Just because you're living in a society where everyone is dressed in a particular way doesn't mean they're not still naked. Just because everyone walks around showing everything that they got doesn't mean that they're not still naked. And so when you cover your hair, it's not a ritualistic thing that you're doing. You're actually covering the Creator's definition of what nudity is, and not the definition of a bunch of guys in parliament defining what nudity is. So that's the definition of hijab if anyone ever asks. Jazakallah khair.
I heard one sheikh say that he quoted the verse, "Ar-rijalu qawwamuna 'ala an-nisa," that men are the maintainers of women. And he added, or he commented that not all men necessarily deserve it. Not all men necessarily deserve it. Nonetheless, this is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
So the question is, what is your advice in terms of so many, youth in this country wasting their time on electronic devices like iPods, phones, computers, etc.?
Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. About 2 months ago, I had the opportunity to sit with my Shaykh, Abdul-Adhim, Hafidhahullah Ta'ala in Toronto. And I asked him a question. I heard something, I asked him a question, and he's probably one of the greatest sheikhs in terms of research in the city of Toronto. So he went to his huge library in his house, and he pulled out a nusakh called Bid'ah al-Fawaid. Now there's 2 books that Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah he wrote. One is called Al-Fawaid, and the other one is called Bid'ah al-Fawaid. So in this book, and the reason he wrote this book, he talks about bid'ah, but now we're going to show you the reasons how the devil tries to get you to come and party with him in the barbecue. So from the first reasons that the Sheikh listed is the devil, lanatullah alayhi, shaitan. He's going to try to make us commit shirk by worshiping other than Allah Azza wa Jal. The second thing, and this is the reason why he wrote the book, is that he's going to try to make us make bid'ah in the religion of Allah Azza wa Jal and the deen of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Everybody knows this. The third thing that he goes on to do is he tries to make us commit the kaba'ir, the big sins. If he can't catch us on the big sins, what are some of the big sins? Zina. What else? Murder. What else? Riba. Okay, if he can't catch us on all that in this book called Al-Kaba'ir, what they are, then he tries to get us to commit the sagha'ir, the smaller sins. What are some of the smaller sins? Huh? Lying? No, that's actually a big sin. Huh? Alcohol, that's a big sin. Cheating? Okay, what else? Hurting people? Okay. So we're not going to debate that right now. But now this is where it gets very interesting. The fifth one he tries to catch us at is things that are from the mubahat. Permissible. Is it permissible for sisters only to play basketball together, yes or no? Yes. Is it permissible for brothers to play basketball by themselves, yes or no? Yes. Say if we play basketball from today to next week and we don't make any salah, is that permissible? No. So the mubahat are, he tries to make you to do the things that are permissible, but you waste so much time doing them that you forget to worship Allah and do these other things. So we find the kids, they're on the iPad, they're on the video games, wasting their life. So it's okay to play video games for an hour, but I know a kid who used to play video games for 24 hours and then he'd fall asleep with the game in his hand like this. This is the way of the devil. And the last one is, and he's getting craftier and craftier, he tries to make the Muslim do a good deed when they could have did a better deed. So for instance, he'll say, come, let's go next door and help our neighbor do their garden. That's a good deed. It's nice to be the neighbor. But you'll be so busy doing it and you'll make it so easy for you to do the good deeds that the better deeds like memorizing Quran or learning the Arabic language, you won't get a chance to do that. Is that pretty deep or what? Now let me ask you guys a question here. I hope the sisters were writing that down and the brothers as well. What is the reason why he tries to do this? Anybody can tell me? I'll give you a copy of all 4 of my books. Yes?
He made a promise to God that he's going to save the mind of all his creation before they see.
That's right. I'm looking for something a little bit more specific, but I'll give you one book. What he tries to do is minimize our good deeds because there's something called the Mazin, the scales. So he knows that he's going to the hellfire. He wants us to come and fry with him and do a little bit of barbecue too. You want to barbecue with the devil, sister? No, good. So what he's going to try to do, and I'll end it with this, is he wants you to do the least amount of good deeds so your bad deeds will outweigh your good deeds and the scales will tip and you'll end up in نار جهنم شد حرا لو كان لا يفقهون. And the sweltering heat of the hellfire is waiting. How do you translate yafqahun? I forget what it means.
Understand.
Yeah, understand. So, are you ready for the hellfire, sister? So we have to all be careful that if we're going to spend some time on those things, we have to try our best, brothers, that at least we spend some time with those machines doing some good things. And try to, at least as they say, when you do a bad deed, what do they do? Do a good deed, and it will what? Erase the bad deed. So if we do a bad deed, try to cover it up with a good deed. Jazakallah khair.
Okay, Jazakallah khair Abu Shahadah. You guys have literally 5 seconds each to answer this because you only need to say like 1 line each. But the question is, this person's basically saying, they come to a lot of these, basically, I guess, events and listen to a lot of speakers, and they're saying they end up unsure what is actually the path to paradise. So if you had one message to give to the youth, to give them that path, what would it be? So 1 line each, please. So we have to finish. So starting with the right side, Yasin.
Have taqwa, be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in everything that you do. Be conscious of Allah concerning His commands, concerning His prohibitions. Have taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala outwardly and inwardly. And inshallah, we will be among the successful. Allahu A'lam.
Ameen.
Okay, I'll give you one ayah. Allah Ta'ala went on to say, after he explained to the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ said to his companions, "This is the path of Allah," and he drew a beautiful line in the middle of the sand. Then he said, "These are some other paths on the right side, some squiggly paths. And then on the left side, these are some squiggly paths." Then he quoted the ayah where Allah Ta'ala went on to say, وَأَنَّ هَذَا صِرَاطٌ مُسْتَقِيمٌ فَاتَّبِعُوا وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا السُّبُلَ فَتَفَرَّقَ بِكُمْ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. This is the path of Allah. Follow it, and do not follow other paths, for verily they will take you to where? So the path of Islam is very clear. Call Allah, call Rasulullah, call Sahaba. If we stick with that, that is the way, because Prophet said, خَيْرَ النَّاسِ قَرْنِي ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ. We should follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ, his companions, his students, and the students of them. If we follow that, brothers and sisters, we're going to be successful.
I guess sticking to the theme of what I was explaining about rational thought, I would probably recommend 3 points. One is understanding your weaknesses, which is that your iman will go up and down, which is your focus on the akhirah. Always remember that it has to be renewed, it has to be kept. You have to keep it up, so you have to constantly do things to remind you that you're going to face Allah, that you're going to face the accountability, what Jannah, what Jahannam is. The second thing is understanding that iman and knowledge are not some holy grail. It's available for everybody, and you should focus on knowledge and understanding Islam and fiqh and hukm shari, because really it's the very foundation of why we exist. It's the whole purpose of why we exist. And also understanding that what should I say, Muhammad? I forgot the 3rd point. I'll leave it at 2 points.
All right, Jazakallah khair. You guys were very crafty with those commas in that 1 line each, so alhamdulillah. So, Jazakumullah khair for answering all those questions. Our Q&A session is now over.